Yo, welcome to the SitRep for the 6th of May 2022. My name is Stuart and this is Ragnarok Survival. We are going to talk about some of the interesting news stories that I've seen in the last 24 hours that I think are pertinent to us as preppers or people who are preparedness minded. Quite often that term preppers has, that tinfoil hat taint to it. So let's just say that we're wise people who are going to prepare for an uncertain future. How does that sound? Okay, it is fucking cold. I'll lead off with that. It's damn cold here. It's like 0 degrees right now where I live. So woke up and it was a chilly one. A bit of frost on the ground, which is interesting for the gardens. That's obviously a bit of a shift now that we have to plan for. So greenhouses, grow houses, and frost resilient crops are going in the ground now. Spent yesterday, or a little bit of yesterday, clearing up a bit of space out in the land to lay down some new gardens, because that's important. That's what I'm going to talk about today, is food, basically. Not going to touch too much on other things that are happening in the world. Going to really stick with the food sort of stuff today. But first off, a couple of things. Let me think. All right. First thing is a redaction. A couple of days ago, I talked about that story about Victoria, how they were passing that bill that looked like they could come in and rip veggies out of your own backyard. Not so. That is not true. So a redaction from me. I did say in that thing when I was talking that I hadn't read the full thing yet. And I did ask people who had read it or who were going to read it to get to me on it and let me know what the ins and outs of it were. And I asked and I did receive. So big shout out to Jen, who went through it, read it in finer detail and pointed out a few things. So we've been discussing a couple of things, and she sent me the little paragraph, which I think was paragraph 54A through to AJ. And it clearly states in there that this does not include a place of residence, a place of like a permanent domicile or residence. So backyards are safe. Backyard gardens are safe. So get in your backyard today and plant some shit. That's all I'm going to say about that, really. Obviously, that was a little story when it flashed up. A lot of people got pretty angry. I looked at it and was like, well, that's kind of my flashpoint right there. But yeah, it's good that we can actually look at it now, a couple of days past, and go, okay, it's still not a great thing. There's the potential there for this to be still quite disruptive to our food supply as a whole. But we need to look at these things and actually with a clear head, with a level head, and go, okay, how does this actually apply to us as individuals? So I did say at the time, it doesn't matter what it says. I'm still going to garden in my backyard. That's not going to stop anything. But thanks, Jen. Thank you very much for going through that and pointing that out. Really appreciate that. Had a couple of reports too that my live yesterday cut out at a certain point. No sound from a certain point onwards when I was talking about a certain thing as well. Not to put the tinfoil hat on or anything. I'm sure it was just some sort of technical difficulty that happened within Instagram. But hey, Jen, thanks. Yeah, interesting timing for it to cut out. So hopefully nothing cuts out today. Anyway, I'm going to talk about food stuff today. All right. So first thing that popped up here, India. India's going to cut its 21-22 wheat production forecast from 111, or just over 111 megatons down to 105. Okay, so that doesn't seem like a whole lot, right? Well, we've got 6 megatons there that we're thinking about cutting down out of 111. Not that big of a deal. Well, it is kind of a bigger deal. We're looking at about 5% cut. What the big deal is if you cast your mind back 2 weeks, and I was talking about India buying up all that shit off Russia. The reason they were buying that shit up off Russia was so that they could, and this is in their own words, fill the gap that the Ukraine was going to have in shortfall for the world. So India basically came out and said, we're going to be the world's breadbasket because Ukraine and Russia are out of the picture now, for now. So we're going to step up and we're going to pump out wheat, and everyone will be okay. Well, turns out, no, they're not going to do that. On top of that as well, if I can find the correct story, here it is. India is actually thinking about limiting their exports on top of that. So we've seen this with a number of countries now, quite a few countries, and this is another one, yet another one coming onto the list that says, hey, we're not going to send our food out anymore. We kind of need it in this country. So good luck out there. So India's basically gone from, yep, we're gonna step up and cover the Ukraine, to we're not going to do that. And not only we're not going to do that, we're not going to export as much as we were, because we're going to need it here. So we're seeing this across the world. A lot of nations are starting to pull back in all sorts of food-related resources, food itself, so export of food, and then all the constituents that go into the food production cycle, namely fertilizer. So fertilizer is a big one that has a shortfall. And I do have a story on fertilizer somewhere here. I'll talk about that later. What else we got in here? The Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations has come out and give us some interesting statistics that there's been a food price increase of 13% in March, which is a new record. We're just busting records left, right, and center here at the moment. 13% is what food rose, according to the FAO, just in March alone. So that is pretty big. There's been a sustained 4-month high food shortage. Their levels are at some of the highest they've ever seen at the moment. And transportation of supplies demand is 31 times higher than normal levels due to the lack of logistical capacity caused by vessel shortages, port congestions, rail backlogs, labor shortages, stowed train engines for fuel conservation, and added train cars to increase efficiency while reducing time of delivery due to full fuel conservation. So a number of things are now playing into this. And again, it is literally like what I'm reading Atlas Shrugged. And if you haven't read Atlas Shrugged, I mean, it's a book that's not for everyone. It's a big person's book, and it's quite difficult to get through. And it's written in the 50s, so the language isn't the language used today. But if you can get over that sort of stuff and actually hook into this book, I highly recommend it, because it is a roadmap. Unfortunately, we're already in it at the moment, and it's only going to get worse from here on in. But if you want to have a bit of an understanding of the engine of the world that we are currently throwing monkey wrenches into, go read Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand, sorry. Aynrand. Ayn Rand. So yeah, this is what we're seeing at the moment. We're 13% increase in price, 31 times the supply demand, transportation demand. All this is pointing to a not good place in the not too distant future for our food supply. Other shortages that we're seeing, let's talk about some power shortages. Switzerland prepares for severe power shortages. So the Swiss government's come out. No prizes for guessing what this is about. Gas coming out of Russia. So unlike Hungary, who have said, no, we're going to still keep buying it because we want to look after our people, Switzerland's said to their people, hey, guess what? There's going to be outages, severe power outages. Until we can get this gas out of Northern Africa and Azerbaijan, which is going to be a convoluted process for them, that at least 20% of their power comes from straight out of Russia. So there's going to be a shortfall there that they're looking at. So they're warning their population, like, hey, just be aware that we're going to not have the power that we we once had. On the other side of the fence here, China independent refineries are secretly snapping up discounted Russian oil. I don't think there's any secret about it. I don't know why they're reporting this to be secret. I think this is just market economics playing out. This is just plain and simple. Here is a country that is selling cheap oil. Here is a country that doesn't give a shit about whatever sanctions and whatever other sort of virtue signaling the rest of the world's putting out. And they're like, this is pretty simple. Cheap oil. We're going to buy that, refine it, and we're going to sell off our oil, our refined oil products cheaper. Simple. So, but again, stronger ties, China, Russia, that's all happening there. Indian heatwave sparks blackout. So I have reported on this before, but it's coming up in the news again. Around 70% of India's power depends on coal. So they are having a coal shortage. They're having temperatures over 45 degrees Celsius, which is like some strange dream to me right now because I'm at zero. I'm out of degrees, 0 degrees Celsius right here. But yeah, the 94 of the country's 165 coal power plants face critical low stock levels. On top of that, we've got rocketing global prices, which have reached $400 per ton, which is preventing imports there. So again, I think India will be kind of not just rubbing their hands going, ooh, cheap coal coming out of Russia. They're like, we actually fucking need this now. And they will be paying for it hand over fist out of Russia and probably Australia as well. Turkey inflation rockets to 70% now. So it's up to 70% in April, which was up from 61.1% in March. For those who don't know or haven't heard me talk about this before, Turkey is in a state of hyperinflation. They're actually in a state of collapse, economic collapse right now, and they have been for at least probably 4 or 5 months. Like overtly, it's been going on for a lot longer than that, but overtly for probably like the last 6 months, they've been in a state of hyperinflation and economic collapse. And it's just yet another thing that's underreported because, it's much more important what's happening with fucking Johnny Depp right now in the world than what's happening with the people of Turkey. Because nobody cares that they have to pay $150 for a loaf of bread. Johnny Depp, man. Not to, curtail his pain or anything or whatever's going on there. But Turkey's inflation rockets 70%. This is due to food and energy crisis. So inflation is a complex beast. It's not quite as simple as like you print more money, you get more inflated economy. There's a number of other factors many other factors that go into there. And just to give you a couple of numbers here, this is from their state data outlet, Turkstat. It's a cool one, isn't it? Turkstat. Annual inflation for production had shot up around 122%, energy up 118%, while even the core inflation index, discounting volatile factors like food and energy, rose from 48.4% to 52.4%. So up over 50% now for core inflation index. Energy and food are seen as like volatile and can go up and down dramatically. So there's other things that they go, oh, this is sort of your core inflation index, what's going on here. Just to juxtapose this, we've been talking about 7-8% in the Western countries, sort of Germany, Australia, UK, US. We've been bouncing around this sort of single digit numbers, but double what we have recently. And as I always say, like that data's bullshit anyway. If you look at real inflation data, we're probably at 15. I would surmise maybe at 20% at the moment, but certainly not 50%. That's something else. So yep, that's another country that's in the hurt locker. Turkey, other countries like Sri Lanka, Peru. These are the dominoes that are falling at the moment. And that we're all in the West going like, la 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 la, everything's great, everything's fine. I'm not looking at that. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has come out and said restoring Russia and Ukraine production is vital to global food security. So we got Russia and Ukraine's agriculture as well as Russia's fertilizer trade. Those things are not coming out at the moment. They're not going to come out at the moment. The effects of this too are not something that are simply fixed. If we clicked our fingers and the war stopped and every farmer got up in the morning tomorrow and was like, bang, straight into it, we still wouldn't see the shortfall that we're going to see curtailed for probably 12 to 24 months. So 1 to 2 years that we're in the hole at the moment. But though that isn't going to happen, we're not going to click our fingers and production is going to start again. And it's going to take a long time to ramp back up. And the destruction that may be wrought to that system may actually take a long, long time. Something as simple as, say, weeds in a paddock. And I think I've talked about this before, but people don't fully understand this. You can't just like go, bam, all right, yep, ramp it up and food's there again. You allow weeds to come in. You leave a paddock for 1 year and certain types of weeds get in there. That can take 2 to 3 years, even out to 5 years, depending on what their methods are, to actually fix that paddock, to make it productive again so that you can actually plant. And then you've got 12 months till you get that food out into the system again. So we're talking about a long, long timeline here. There will 100% be a shortfall here. And the people who are going to hit it feel it the most are probably your African countries or your poorer countries. Sub-Saharan Africa is going to cop it hard for this. Like I always say, Australians, we live inside a bubble. We live inside many bubbles. In fact, I often say this. And we're insulated against a lot of these effects, but we are going to feel the ripples of this in Australia, probably through food price. But there are people who are going to starve to death. All right, so just put that in perspective as you're enjoying your morning latte or almond cappuccino, as it may be. Yeah, these effects are coming. It's news story after news story this morning on these. Here's the story I was talking about. World's largest fertilizer company warns crop nutrient disruptions through 2023. So this is from Nutrien, which is a Canadian company, Canada being one of the largest fertilizer exporting countries in the world. Their CEO has come out and said, hey, fertilizer, this is a big deal. This isn't going to fix itself quickly. This is going to be an effect that we're feeling. Now, they're saying 2023, as in the end of 2023. So they're saying, and that's earliest that things are going to get okay. Best case scenario. They're saying 2 to 3 years that we're going to be feeling this. The world's largest fertilizer company warns supply disruptions could extend into 2023. A bulk of the world's supply has been taken offline due to the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. This has sparked soaring prices and shortages of crop nutrients in top growing areas worldwide. An early indication of global food crisis could be in the beginning innings. Could be in the beginning innings. So, yeah, the food system that we have at the moment, for those of you who don't know the food system, how it runs at the moment, I mean, it's a very complex beast. But essentially, we had something called the Green Revolution that meant we could grow a lot of food. And we have had more food than we need for a very long time, for like at least, let's say, 50, 60 years now. And the reason we know this is because population increases. Population cannot increase unless there's a surplus of food. It's pretty, like, there's other factors in there, but that's a pretty fundamental factor. So, I always find it interesting when there's like, there's been food crises that they've talked about in the past and people are starving to death. I remember when I was growing up, it was all about Ethiopian kids, right? They're all starving to death. This is not a food production problem. This is a food distribution problem. So we have countries that will not distribute their food correctly or mismanage their food production on a scale that affects their nation. But worldwide, we've had plenty enough food for plenty enough people. And technically, with this system, we probably could support even more people. But this system is finite. this system requires inputs and many of them. And now we're seeing what happens when those inputs are curtailed or have shortages. So we are about to hit a hard wall as far as food supply goes. And if we don't figure out another way to create food en masse, utilizing a system other than fertilizers, other than extrinsic inputs into that land, then we're going to see die off. That's all there is to it. We're going to see people die off en masse. And all the indicators that I can see are pointing to that. What does this mean for us? And I know I sound like a fucking broken record, but garden, all right, guys, grow your own fucking food, secure your own food, start buying up food now. Like there's plenty of it still here on Australian shelves. So go out and start buying it now. I've certainly been doing it. Every time I go to the supermarket, I try and buy a little bit more, just little extra things. And then when I get to go to places like, Costco, or I see things on sale, then I do bigger buy-ups. I store long-term stuff in big plastic 44-gallon drums that are sealed. I have oxygen absorbers in there. I use Mylar bags, all this sort of stuff. But then my pantry is just a big pantry. I don't have 1 or 2 cans of tomato. I've got 48 cans of tomato, tin tomato. I've got, tuna, stuff that I eat regularly. I don't buy 1 packet of chips. I buy 20 when it's on sale, blah, 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 blah. This is the sort of stuff we need to be doing, though. Secure yourself, secure your family's food supply. And I've even started talking. We do have community gardens in my town, but they're shit. And they were kind of like thrown on land that nobody wanted. And the reason nobody wants it is at least 4 months. And judging by the weather today, it's going to be closer to 6 months of the year. You can't grow anything there. So I'm going to start petitioning that we have more ability to grow on larger pieces of ground around our town. And I think everyone should be doing this. Steve, how long does canned stuff last? It really depends on what it is. But generally speaking, most canned stuff will have a best before date of 3 years, thereabouts, depending on what it is. But usually it's 3 to 5 years on this sort of stuff, right? Now, best before date is very interesting. All that says is that this tastes best before this date. After that date, we can't guarantee the taste. It doesn't say that you cannot eat it. A use by date. So this is the Australian, under the Food Standards Australia New Zealand, FSANZ. Under their write-up, we have to have 1 or 2 dates, a best before date or a use by date. Use by date only pertains to things that can be deadly if eaten after a certain time. So milk has a used by date because it can make you extremely sick if you eat it after a certain date. Meat has a use by date, blah, blah, blah. All these sort of things, these perishable sort of things that can cause disease have a use by date. Everything else has a best before date. So check that out. If it has a best before date, it's kind of saying like, well, you can eat this at any time. It's just going to taste like shit, or the nutrient level may have gone down in it, but it's still food. Most canned stuff, if kept well, should last upwards of about 10 years. Okay. The can needs to be stored in a good area, so it can't be exposed to heat overly. And the cold shouldn't matter too much, but if it got extremely cold there, then that might be a problem. The can also needs to be intact. Dinted cans, big no-no. That's a bad sign. You got dints in those cans. Like I used to do this all the time, like pick up dinted cans and go like, "Oh, hey, this can's dinted. Can I get a discount on it?" But don't do it. Look for cans that are solid, that are intact. 10 years, to be honest, I probably wouldn't balk if it had been 15 years or even maybe 20 years for certain things. And I was like, if I'm hungry enough, I'm going to eat that. But, I'm not telling you to eat cans or store them out to 10 years. I'd say 5 years. But also think about having a rotation plan as well. So I don't just buy cans and then just stick them in a closet somewhere or dig them into a hole in the ground. What I do is I have a rotation system. So when I buy new stuff, it's just like it on the supermarket. I bring all the stuff on my shelf forward and I put that stuff at the back. And so I'm constantly rotating, or I'm eating what I use and using what I eat, if that makes sense. or store what you eat what you store is another way to put it. All right. Hopefully that clears that up. Where am I up to? Yes. Steak prices are going to go higher. Retailers seek price shields as inflation sees no end in sight. So your meat prices have been going up. And I said this in Australia, our meat prices, even though they are high at the moment, are actually capped. No worries. Any questions, guys, feel free to shoot them through and I'll answer it to the best of my ability. I certainly don't know everything, but I'll tell you what's in my head. Meat prices in Australia, we've been lucky because of the ability to export being curtailed by China being clogged up. We can't actually export enough meat out to them at the moment, which means we have a glut in the meat market. And even though our beef prices are historically high, there's maybe a theory out there that they should be double what they are right now. But because we've got so much meat in our country at the moment, can't get it out. So it's like, well, let's just enjoy our own delicious meat. But those prices are set to go up. And I think once things start to clear, especially within China, or the market adjusts. So, it's a little bit of a slow moving beast, but farmers kind of go like, okay, I sold this much. So next year I can sell this much and this much and this much. And then they get to this year and they go, oh, I only sold this much. So next year I'm only going to grow this many cows. Then all of a sudden the demand increases again and there's a shortfall between supply and demand, price increases. So I think price will increase. My encouragement for people with this is think about if you are a regular eater of meat, then think about how you could increase your supply of meat, either through having your own animals, through hunting, or through storing meat through either dried methods, maybe dehydrated meat, or through freezers. So myself, I like to store a lot of meat. I mean, I'm a hunter as well. Store meat. I buy meat off local farmers, and I have a big drop freezer. And I'm talking to my mutual assistance group soon, and we're going to talk about all pitching in and buying another drop freezer for that purpose in particular, just so we can buy up some meat now and store that away. But like I say, with inflation, the way it's trending at the moment, and any food we can buy and store now, when we're eating it, it means we're saving money. We're putting away for the future. It's like a little savings bank of food. Delicious, delicious savings bank. All right, so I think that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about today. If for some reason you're watching this and you are in the USA, my recommendation is keep your head down. There's going to be a lot of riots coming out in the USA, especially around this whole pro-life, pro-choice thing that's happening at the moment. All the signs and signals are there that this one could blow up to be a big one. So stay safe out there if you are one of the USA people watching me speak at you. But apart from that, that's it for today. So a lot of stuff about food today. I did try and focus things on just on food today. But that also, like, I was just going through the stories and I said, well, wow, there seems to be a lot of stuff about food today. So really start to think about this, guys. This is something that I know I harp on about a lot, but I think it's really, really important. I think this is where we're heading to in the future. Definitely shaky times in the US. Thank you. Thanks, VirginGen17 for watching and for your comments. Really appreciate everyone who jumped on today and watched, or you're watching this later on, both on the YouTubes and on the Instagram. Yes, tomorrow I will be talking up at the Free at the Sea event in Bondi. That starts at 1 p.m. Sydney, Bondi. And I'm pretty much going to be saying the same sort of shit that I say here. So I'll be doing a talk with Lauren, that Insta chick. We'll be talking about community. I'll be probably chucking in something along the lines of, hey, you should be growing your own food, people. And I think I'll also be doing a separate talk on gold and silver. So how to buy it, why you should buy it, why it's cool, and looking at building up your own reserves, essentially. So backing yourself up, being your own reserve bank, being your own food supply chain, or your food chain, being your own water supply, being your own security, all that sort of stuff. So until then, I probably will get one out tomorrow morning just before I leave to go up to Sydney. But yeah, until then, guys, stay safe, keep prepping. If you've got any questions, please feel free to throw them through to me. I always love the questions. And Semper Paratus.